All right, welcome back to the Weekend Warrior Show Recap Podcast. Sitting down with my good friend Aaron Newsome. Second appearance on the Weekend Warrior Show Recap Podcast. Happy to have you.
I'm so glad you asked me to come back.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. We got some new stuff to talk about. So
I haven't talked to you since the last time I was here.
yeah, well, we make a point to, talk as little as possible. So we got to save it all for the camera. Not really. But anyway, new single. That's one thing I want to get into.
Yeah.
Is it out quite yet? Or
no.
Is it, you can listen to it on YouTube, right?
Yeah, you can listen to it on YouTube. It's called Little Flyer.
Okay, well, let's just start with that then, okay? So let's get into just the overall story of that song first.
Yeah. I had a friend who passed away in the beginning of March, and she was... we went to high school together. We were in the same class. She was one of the people who really encouraged me to start doing music, and that was by auditioning for the choir at my high school my senior year. And I mean, eventually I made it in, and now I'm doing this. So I don't think I would be doing music now if it wasn't for her. But she passed away in March. And through all the posts and memorials and such that I was reading about her, every, one seemed to say the same things in, very different words. And even through the things that I remembered about her and knew about her, it all sort of fit. So I wrote a song, and it helped a lot of people grieve. It still is helping a lot of people grieve.
That is the hope.
Yeah. And I was able to, make this and give it to her family. And
you had a guest appearance too, so
I had a guest appearance. Yeah.
Bit.
The other person who was a part of that conversation of them, sort of persuading me to join the choir was my friend Bree Stadler. Also in the same class. She's one of Brittany's really good friends. And so it's kind of just ironic that one of the first things that I released is something that is directly tied to her when I started doing, music.
Yeah, it's kind of like she was the beginning of your journey.
In some sense. My muse in a sense.
Yeah.
What's the reason you do what you do? She's a big part of it. But my friend Bree, she recorded on that with me. She and Brittany were both cheerleaders, and so the title Little Flyer is in reference to a dove or an angel or a cardinal, whatever it may be for you and what you think about people after they've passed on. But they were cheerleaders, and they were the tiny girls on the cheerleading team.
People they threw around, right?
They could launch them higher into the air than the other ones. So, so it's also a nod to her being a cheerleader, and that was something that she did all through college and as well. And Bree, she was the cheer
captain,
teacher, coach.
I got you.
Cheer coach. After high school, so they both stuck around with it for a long time.
Yeah.
And so but I wrote this and gave it to her family. They really, really liked it. Her mom actually was able to listen to it today for the first time, and she was like, really, really good. Really, she really loved it.
And I gotta say, I had a little bit of presence just in the overall process of recording, because we actually tracked it in this room with some of these microphones that we're on right now, and then we took it to Eric over at Eclipse to get it professionally mixed and mastered, and it was a new experience. I don't know if I'm totally sold on this setup for that, when you can just go in the studio and get you were in there today, for instance, and you can just hear I don't think there's anything wrong with Little Flyer. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it is an upgrade though when you go into an actual studio and you get the nice mics and multiple mics, and it was cool to kind of have a little bit of a part in kind of the overall process. I know you're kind of new to recording, so I thought it would be hopefully helpful to some extent.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I'd never thought you could record off of a phone and then
Well,
just throw it right in. But
it was this pod track thing that I used, the Zoom for the podcast. I usually use this for live tracking, like for live, because it's a cheap multi. So it's kind of cool because it separates each track, so you can still mix it like a multi track recorder. But it's digital, so I think that there's some extent to that might not be the absolute best, but it does the job, especially for like demo type stuff. And then we got the nice mics on your guitar. We actually use my guitar, if I recall correctly.
That's why it sounds really good.
Right. Well, your guitar has its own signature, I would say, kind of its own personality. But I was digging some of it today when we were in the studio, because that's what you use today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, obviously the nice mics and everything help, but I thought, it was singing pretty good. And, to get you in here, you pretty much did like 2 takes of guitar and then 1 take of vocals, I think. It was something simple like that. Oh,
for a little flyer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and, it was quick.
It was quick.
And then we got you to the studio. That was quick, too. And then we had Bree, right? Bree come in and record the backing vocals, which, it was kind of fun to watch because she had never really done anything like that. She's very nervous and trying to just she did a really nice job.
Yeah.
And
she really likes it. She really likes it.
It's a daunting thing if it's something you've never really experienced before, though. If you've never come into the studio and have people watch you and really try to hit your notes perfectly, your adrenaline spikes and then you're going sharp. But it was one of those things where, she was kind of singing along with the recording and I was like, I don't really know how this is going to go. And then once the mics were on, she just nailed those takes.
Yeah.
She really, really you could tell there's a little bit of performance background because it was once the lights were on and the mics were on, she just kind of knocked it out of the park. I didn't really feel like I had to do anything after that coach wise, and that was pretty cool to see. And then introducing you to Eric, which kind of my favorite engineer, I guess, or
he's awesome.
one that I use a lot. I mean, no shade on anybody else that I've used in the past, but for the amount of money you're paying, he just has the know-how. He knows how to do literally anything I've ever asked him. And some of the stuff is very tedious, and some takes a long time to kind of get to the thing that I'm actually trying to, because I might not have the best descriptive words to describe it, but it's once he understands kind of what I'm trying to get at, or I show him a bunch of other kind of samples of things that are similar, he can really dial it in. But it is kind of interesting with him because he comes from kind of 90s, early 2000s mixing. Yeah. And that's just a different mentality, completely than modern day.
I try to figure out questions I can ask him. And then I'm I don't know what to ask this guy.
Yeah, and
I don't even know what.
That's the whole learning process of being in the studio, because right now, at least when I was, at your level of recording, brand new pretty much, you don't know what the goal, you don't know the destination you're really looking for. I mean, you have an idea, oh, I like how this song sounds, but then you ask yourself, well, why does it sound like that? What are the different things? You start analyzing those little details, and you can get more of a vocabulary and more descriptive with how you're describing kind of what you're shooting for. But just knowing what you're shooting for takes a long time to develop as somebody who records. I mean, I still struggle with that at times, but I've done it for long enough that I can usually find the right words. It might take a little extra time to get there, but I've gotten it down to where I can say the right things sometimes, but just having the destination, I think, is a hard thing because you're just trying to get things down, It's something that is kind of a blessing and a curse, because you have this ignorant bliss about you where you're
me.
Just anybody who records. When I was recording, I didn't know anything, and I just go in there and say, "Here, make this sound good," and then you just kind of let them take the reins.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, you're well, that's not really what I was going for, and it takes a long time to get to that point, I feel like, but. You're on the path, and that's the important part. Getting started, getting going with it. Everything's sounding good so far, and having somebody like Eric in there who really kind of just understands it all, it really, really helps.
We're like, I don't know how to ask you this question, but can you make the thing that sounds like this sound a little bit more like this, but not like this? And he's like, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, and
I'm like, I don't know how you understood what I was trying to say.
I mean, he's so used to dealing with musicians that don't have the vocabulary, so he can usually get there eventually. And that's one of the reasons I love working with him. But I also love working with him just because, no matter I don't even know if he likes my music. I don't think he could name one of my songs necessarily. But when we're in there recording, he's like 1,000% in. Like he's trying to get the
invested.
best out of the track, no matter what the track is. Even so, it's weird because I don't even know his taste in music really. I mean, I know he plays a lot of keys, a lot of organs, very good at probably the one of the best in town with, playing the piano and stuff. But so I have no real reference of his taste except that. I've seen him in other sessions. I've seen him in, rap. I've seen him in heavy metal kind of stuff. Just everything. Acoustic singer, songwriter, country. He does it all. But it's like no matter what he's there in, he's like just in it. And I feel like that's for an engineer, that's what you really want. Is somebody who's just trying. Doesn't matter his taste or preference. He's trying to get the very best out of the track.
Yeah. He's pushing for you 100% too.
Yeah. And he has some great suggestions sometimes too along the way. He's like, well, maybe if you start it a little bit like this instead of like that. He's done stuff like that here and there, and I don't know. He's just like a great engineer, and he has the experience.
He's answering all those questions also while he's just like muscle memory, doing everything on his his 4 screens that he's looking at.
He was showing me his mouse today because he has a lot of issues with his wrist because he's always typing. He's in there for 8, probably 16 hours someday, depending on the day, and just doing the same motions over and over again. So he has this like really high-tech ergonomic mouse. And then he was saying like he's still getting some problems because his hands are like this. So he had this old stand just sitting around that was not for this purpose at all, but your natural kind of. So he gets really into like the tedious science and that. Because he's just so hands-on and so he moves so quick and so fluently and he's just on top of everything all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just a great person I think to have in your corner when you're trying, especially when you're new, because he has all the experience that you don't. That's such a valuable thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when you recorded Little Flyer in this room, I did a rough mix of it, and it's like I have some things that I've accumulated over the years, but you give it you can, it's night and day difference, the mix that I had and then the mix that he ended with. And it's just those years and years of doing it full time every day, all day.
I didn't even know you could like do some of the things that he was doing on there.
I mean it's amazing. It really is. And I don't know, I mean, do you need all that stuff all the time? I mean, hopefully not. Hopefully you can go in there and you could do a pretty good take and not need all that stuff. But if you can polish it up, it just ups the level, ups your game quite a bit. And I just think it's so fun and so awesome. Being in the studio is, one of my favorite things to do because, I mean, it comes with being frustrated at times because you just can't get it to do the thing that you
want it or need it to do.
Yeah, but it's just that process. I don't know. I have this vision sometimes where I'm like, I think of the song like a ship in the night, and you're just like polishing it up. I don't know. This is a little abstract, I guess, but feeling colorful night, those colorful nights. But anyway, you're check. But most people look at a boat and they're just like, yeah, it's a boat. Like they're not thinking about all the time you spent on every detail of detailing that whole ship, every part of it. And you get so dialed into that. It's also a double-edged sword because the more you dialed in, you get to polishing every little bit. You start to see those imperfections.
Yep.
And, those can drive you nuts. I just had this experience. I have a song coming out at the end of the month. And there were so many things that like I thought at the beginning it sounded great, and then you listen to it like 100 times and you're like, there's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And then you start knocking those off the list one by one, but we got down to like 1 or 2 things that just I was just struggling so hard to try to figure out what was going on and why it was sounding it had to do with the guitar tone. It sounded like a little, I don't know how to describe it, and this is part of the problem, is I was getting like a little MIDI, like throaty kind of, I don't know. I mean, and I told Eric that, and he really made it sound a lot better, but it still was there a little bit. And then I took a couple weeks off and I started working on the video I'm shooting for it, and then like, you know, not paying attention, really making sure it's synced up to the, you know, the audio. That's like the main thing, but not like really listening to the song. And then you come back 2 weeks later and you're listening to it and you're like, oh, I barely even noticed the stuff that I was
yeah. There was something with Little Flyer that I noticed too, and now that I'll listen to it now, I'm like, I have no idea what it was that I was even thinking about.
The thing that's weird with that too is like you're waiting for it. You're like, I know that thing that I hate.
Like there's something in here, I know it, but I can't remember where it's at.
Well, I get it where it's like I know where it's at, and then it's like I'm waiting for it, and then like I'm like hyper focused on that 1 second marker. You know, 132, it's coming. You know, that thing that I hate, and then you're like, sometimes you're like, did I hear it that time? Or is that just all, you know?
Yeah.
I wonder how crazy I get about that stuff, because I am very tedious, and, you know, he's a saint for putting up with me, but I think we've done a lot.
He is.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he is.
I spend way too much time on every song, and, you know, because for me, it's like, that's going to be probably the final version of this song, so it's like, I don't know if I'm going to ever re-record it necessarily. So it's like, I want to get the best out of it as possible. And like, you know, just put the period on it. That song is done. That's how I want it to be, you know? And it's hard to do that sometimes. It's hard to, because the song that I was just working on, that's going to be out, like I said, at the end of September, I could have worked on it for another 6 months probably. Like where to draw that line. And I could have also quit 6 months ago, you know, like, I mean, it's such a abstract line and a decision you have to make for yourself. Like, is it good enough?
Yeah.
And that holds me back a lot. You know, you get people like Ryan Wolf, for instance, who, I mean, he just is recording and he's done. Like he doesn't.
He's quick.
Yeah, I mean, he did do a lot of mixing and editing and stuff with the Sea Glass album. I will say that, because that was, and I might have pushed him into that a little bit just to see it from my mentality just a little bit. But you know, he even with the stuff he's been recording lately is just such a high turnaround rate, and he doesn't get too hyper focused. And sometimes I think that's like a blessing, because you know, I have all these songs that like are just sitting kind of like waiting for their day, and then like I keep pushing that day back, and the whole point is to keep you know, you're supposed to just be consistently releasing music, but it's a hard thing to do, you know.
Yeah, I just got out of I would try to write something and then I just put it away forever and never come back to it. And then like recently, within the last like 2 weeks, I've put together like 2.5 songs.
Nice.
And so it's like, okay, well, good to know I can still do this.
Yeah. Well, there is that thing. There is that thing of like, because for me, you know, I probably write anywhere from 1 to 5 songs a year. I mean, I don't really pick the inspiration. It just comes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not one of those guys that really like carries a notebook around necessarily, or you know, I usually sit down with the guitar. If I'm writing, I'm going to be writing. That's kind of, but I need to kind of feel something to get there. Which maybe that's laziness. I don't know, but I think everybody's process is a little bit different. And you know, when you're juggling the 85 different things you have to do to be a musician, you know, sometimes sitting down to write, even though it should be priority 1, it gets put on the back burner, because you're like, I'll get to it tomorrow. But you know, all the current projects you're working on, all the, you know, this podcast stuff, I'm working on a video for a song. I have like 8 songs in the
recordings.
And then I have, you know, a session coming up where I'm gonna do like a live shoot, you know. So it's like all these, and then booking, and then promotion, and then, so you know, I don't know if that, and then maintaining a 5-hour set is a thing that I have to keep on regularly, and it's like I'm learning songs sometimes for that. So I'm writing songs sometimes for that also, but it's just like when I first started with music, it was like just write all the time as much as I can. A lot of terrible songs too. I mean,
Yeah.
you
I'll know it's a terrible song within like the first two lines, and I'm like, I'm just gonna shelf this right now.
right.
And so like ones that I even get like halfway in on, I'm like, okay.
But it's still a
I've
good
got-
exercise regardless.
It is.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's a bad thing to write bad songs. I think you almost sometimes have to write some bad songs to get to the good ones.
Yeah.
And especially when you're first, I think, starting out writing, because it's like you're just figuring out how to do everything, you know. So you experiment a lot of ways. I again might be using that as an excuse to be lazy sometimes. Like I'll know it when I know when it's time. You know, that's kind of how I always feel. It's like
I've had a couple that I've written that have like within like 10 minutes. It was like Little Flyer was one
Yeah,
that
and
was
those-
done within like 10 minutes.
those tend to be the better ones. I mean, if I'm being honest.
Corduroy
like,
Jacket, that's one that I do. If you come see me play, I play that one. That one's probably like 10 minutes. But then there's one that took me an entire year to complete.
Right.
And
Well,
one that, maybe is like 3 months. One's that's like 3 weeks.
Let me
And-
tell you the story about the last song I wrote, because it is wild to think about in the spectrum of, all this I've been doing for so long. I wrote this guitar riff that I actually wrote one of the Unemployed Architects song called The Jester. And I wrote the start to the lyrics to this completely different guitar part. They're both in drop D, but, in some similarities, but definitely not the same. And eventually I found a cooler part that went better with the rhythm of the lyrics and stuff, and just had a cooler vibe. So I completely shelved this guitar riff. And then about a year and a half ago, I wrote this whole song to this chord progression that actually is kind of a nod to the song is called Station 11, which is a show that the main theme was very inspiring. It's just chord progression music, kind of no vocals or anything. So I wrote the whole song to this chord progression because I really, really like this chord progression. But I'm like, I can't really, I don't want to like steal it. So, and it was kind of boring, honestly. It wasn't like grabbing me. I like the lyrics, but the melody and the energy of the song I wasn't really feeling. So I put that on the back burner. I was like, whatever, that's just one of those songs I'm never really going to do anything with. And sometimes I just do that as like a writing exercise to try to, get the vibe of what why the thing that inspired me to do it inspired me in the first place. So like I have a couple songs like the trilogy song that were Logan, kind of inspired by movies that I really enjoy. So this is an example. This is the show on HBO that I really enjoyed, and I really like the overall vibe of the show. But this theme just spoke to me in a really cool way. So, but I did. So it's kind of a writing exercise. I was like, I probably not do anything. And then, I was writing this other song, and I was like playing around with the riff that I'd written like 15 years ago or whatever, 10, 15 years ago. And then I was like, I wonder if I tried to do those lyrics to this.
Yeah.
And it just like fits so good. It's weird. It's weird. It does. I shouldn't say it. It just feels right.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily. It doesn't fit perfect. I won't say that because it is kind of a weird rhythm to some extent. But and it's one of those that I don't think I would ever be able to. I wouldn't want to record it with a metronome. Like the rhythm is moving throughout the whole thing. Like it's just a different animal completely. But it's just like, so hold on. I guess what I'm saying is those songs that you can't quite figure out, like, hold on, you never know when those are going to come in handy.
And I can't remember what it was, but one that I do now is like happened with that, where I was writing something and it had like a melody, but I had these other lyrics written that I also was trying to work on, and one day I accidentally sang. I flipped open my like notebook and I thought it was the other song.
There you go.
So I started singing it. And I was like, well, this sounds a whole lot better actually.
Right. And it just, but there's no one way that I write a song. I don't think. I think it's like it comes how it comes. And sometimes it's 15 years, sometimes it's 10 minutes, and I do think that if you were to like fraction it out or percentage it out, those 10-minute ones tend to be maybe the best. But I've gotten some really songs that I just struggled for so long. It's like I wanted every word to mean exactly what I wanted it to mean, but also fit the rhyme and fit the rhythm. And I'm bad. I flub rhythms all the time, vocally, lyrically, because it's like I'm almost more like I want it to say what I want it to say more than I want it to, be perfectly musical sometimes. But,
I'm challenging myself on like these next songs that I'm writing. Like I already have the titles picked out to them, so I'm writing based off of what
you get
the
like
title.
a concept.
So I'm gonna do that because like the ones I've written, like I have 10 so far, and besides like 2 or 3, they're all just like really specific or tell a really good story. And I was like, well, this song's done. What are you gonna call it? I don't know, you know. Or it was just like
naming the song can almost be as frustrating as writing it.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
More frustrating.
Well, Little Flyer is like the 4th thing that I've decided to call it.
Right. I like that name a lot though. For some reason,
you were like, you should just do Little Flyer, and I was
because
like,
it was.
Okay. I think I like
Little
it.
Flyer or something.
It was
else.
Fly High Little Flyer.
Fly High Little Flyer.
And then it was Fly High, and you're like, just call it Little Flyer.
Yeah, I just
Dude,
for
just
some
call
reason. Well, I didn't know about the second one, but you Fly High Little Flyer. Like I just thought it was a little more concise, I guess.
Yeah.
And it just has a cool ring and sound to it, but it's short and it gets to the point. It's not as much of a mouthful, but it's such an arbitrary thing sometimes. I mean, I have a song called DJ Scribbles, and I my bass player. It's based off. I didn't know this at the time, but I just could not think of a name for this song, and I had to do this audition tape for this Battle of the Bands we were doing, and I played that song, and we had to list the titles, and he helped me film it, and I was like, well, what do you think? And he's a pretty funny guy. He went to Second City, and like he did, very, very just charming, charismatic guy that can come up with. But for some reason, he said DJ Scribbles, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like I didn't ask any questions. I just needed a name, and that stuck. And then fast forward, I found out that it's some like weird, what is his name? We were just talking about him, the comedian that did The Circle, Dane Cook. It's some Dane Cook joke, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
That he was almost just making a joke like, oh, you should call it this. And just, he thought I'd be like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And, so he's named a couple
I've
of
never heard
songs.
that joke.
Yeah, well, look it up. I'm sure you'll love it. But
I hope so.
Yeah. But, so you sometimes it's completely arbitrary. Sometimes it's like you need it for like that's the main point of the songs. But sometimes it's just a catalog thing. Like you just need to say so you have the reference.
Yeah.
But and I don't know. I just sometimes I really he named one of mine called Fool's Gold. I was calling it, and he was like, you should call it Pyrite. So I call it that at times, and then. I think Shapeless. He came up with I don't know. He's when I don't know what to call something.
You text him first.
Yeah. Because we were playing in a band, so we'd play the song and I'd throw it out to everyone, and he would he studied improv. He'd come up quick, and a lot of times he had some good input. And you can get really stuck on that. It's like what to call us because I don't know. Anyway, but. I lost my train of thought, but we were talking about writing songs and how it's different every time.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't throw away those old notebooks, I think was the bottom line of my story. Yeah. So
okay, I'll keep them.
Just because I said, right? No, I won't say it. Anyway. So let's talk about some of the shows you've had more recently. You've been playing out a lot. So the first time that you were on here, you had your first big weekend where you had, what was it?
I had 5 shows.
5 shows in one weekend.
Yeah.
And that was like a big deal. Like that was like your first like big one.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about how this has all progressed since then. Like you've been playing
in May.
Pretty much every Friday, Saturday, if not other days of the week, right?
Yeah. That was in May. May was busy. And then like June, July, August, like the summer months were really, really nice. I probably played, 15 shows at least June, July, and
those summer
August.
Months are crazy always.
August I had probably 21, I think, and some of them were like really cool. I mean, a lot of, a couple farmers markets, some, some birthday parties, private parties, anniversary things and such like that. A lot of restaurant, bar gigs. Played some cool places.
Some weird ones, according to one of the phone calls I got from.
Yeah,
we can get into that one.
That one was nuts.
That's a fun story. So maybe
that
we'll
one
talk
was
about
so
that
fun.
But let's talk about the riverboat one. That one was the
barge.
The barge, right?
Yeah.
So you had a show out in a barge. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah. So I have been going up to like Lake Carroll is where it's at.
And what town?
Near Savannah,
okay.
Illinois, near Lanark, Illinois, Galena. If you're familiar with Galena,
so north,
it's probably
right?
an hour away from that.
Is it north?
Yeah, it's northwest.
Right.
So I've been going up there. I played a couple like bars up there in that area. I have family that lives over there, so I'm over there anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And they have like an end of the year bash, and it was Labor Day weekend, and I had played previously, and one of the audience members there, she's in a band that lives local to that area, and they're really good, and they've been down to Nashville. They've done some recording and stuff, and she's like, you're really good, and I hate coming to see live music and all these people, be better than me. I don't like singing that. She's like, but you're really good. And she's like, we got a show coming up on a barge in the middle of the lake for Labor Day weekend. Do you want to open for us? And I was like, hell yeah. I was like, I would love to do that. So it was cool. My cousin Jeff brought me out on his boat to the barge, and then I played on the barge.
And you were lucky enough to just have to bring a guitar, right?
Yeah, they had.
Because I would imagine that would be kind of a rough load in.
Yeah, that would not have been fun. I only had to bring my guitar. They had like speaker stacks with 8 speakers on each one, and there were some boats that weren't obeying the no wake zone, and so there were some times where they were just wobbling back and forth, and I was like, this is not gonna be good. I was like, but it's not my stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, but this is not looking friendly towards these.
I'm sure
equipment.
At a certain point they've probably gotten used to just that sort of thing.
Well, I was like playing, and I could see it out of my eyes, and I was just like looking over at it, and they're like, this happens all. Don't worry about it. This happens all the time. Those guys are super sick, but it was cool because like there were like walls on the barge, and then there was just a spot where it was just, you could just get right off into the water, and there was no really boats around us. So I'd start playing, the sound guys would set me up and like, all right, yeah, we're going to go do sound check. And they'd jump off the barge and swim out and be like, sounds good. And they'd come back in. But it was also like hot that day, and the barge was a black barge too. And so it was hot everywhere on there.
So
like,
jumping in was probably
they were jumping in, and they kept jumping in, but I played like an hour and a half. It was awesome. There were like 70 boats that showed up, and each one had multiple people on it, and
that's awesome.
I got really good reception, and everybody really liked it. I ended up booking another gig out of it upcoming in October, and potentially something cool happening with that band that I opened for in February, but we're still trying to figure some things out for that. But that was really cool. And then that was the same day I had the
other
crazy
show.
show.
All right, well, let's just jump right into that then. So
they asked me to do a birthday party when I had played at one of the previous times, and it just happened to be on that same day. So I was like, I'm already going to be in town. Like, cool, I'll do it. So I went up, and it was for like 3 hours, and this was on the water. This house was on the water. So like, these guys had some good money, and I was sitting out there, and I got there, and I was like, where do you want me to set up? And he's like, in the backyard. But their backyard is like
huge,
2 football fields long and extremely wide. And he's like, yeah, just go set out there. And I'm like, all right. So I walked out, and there was like a little walkway leading out to like where the dock is and everything, and 2 sidewalks that split off to make sort of like a peace sign. And so I just set up at that like intersection where all 3 of them go, because that's where like the food and everything was. So people were down there. So I set up, I started playing. I played like 30 minutes, and then the one of the friends of like the birthday party girl.
Well, and you were saying like everybody was mostly pretty far away at first, right?
Oh yeah, everybody was like at the house, and I was back by myself.
Right.
So I just like, it took really long to tune my guitar. I guess I don't know. I didn't.
Well, it's a weird experience. I've been in this situation a bunch of times, and it's like, you could be annoyed by it, or you could just be like, well, I'm gonna do some weird songs because obviously they don't really care a whole lot, and I can just stretch out on some of these and do maybe some ones that I like need to almost practice because they're so far away that like if you make a mistake, that like nobody pretty much is gonna notice.
No.
And at a certain point, your hope is that you're gonna play one of these songs and it's gonna like bring some people down to where you're at. I mean, the location is kind of like everything though. So it's like if you're set up in a spot where people aren't gonna get comfortable, it might be a whole night of that.
Yeah.
But continue.
No, it was like cool. I played like 30 minutes and like one of the friends, or maybe she's the sister of the girl whose birthday party it was, and she's not like a 6 or 7 year old. Like this girl's like 34. I think it's her 34th birthday party, and it's like super clear that the guy who hired me is like she said she likes beans, so I got 16 gallons of beans type of thing where he's like, she said she liked it, so I got it.
Right.
He's like, yeah, just do your thing. And when he hired me, I had a guitar player with me too. So he was also, I think, expecting, something else. So I played. Her friend came up, or her sister came up, and she was like, and she was extremely drunk. She was like, so I'm gonna play, I'm gonna sing, and I was like, what? And she's like, you play, I sing, and I was like, this is not how this works, but if it gets me to not really have to do my entire job, I guess I'll go halvesies with you.
It's not that you don't want to do your job necessarily. It's that like you're not really set up in the most ideal position to do your job. So it's like try to have fun with it in the sense that in the space you're in.
Might as well have the best time that I can.
And if you do this for them, they're gonna have a good time. So I mean, that's really why you're there.
So she came up. And she was playing we played like 4 different half songs because she was like, I don't like it anymore. You're not playing this. And I'm like, well, you asked me to play EDM on an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Like, what do you want me to do here?
Usually in these situations, my method is to be like, it's on you. If you want to go up there and kind of look how you're going to look, and, hopefully it's good. But if it goes the other way, that's kind of on you. I don't want to have
I didn't ask you to come up here.
Yeah. You made the decision. You might have had a few too many drinks and don't really understand what you're even asking.
Yeah.
But I try to not be involved. Like, I would rather just put on an iPhone on a karaoke track and let them have at it than really. I don't want to try to be figuring out songs for them, especially in that case where it's completely
there was
weird.
a lot of play some Taylor Swift, play some,
which stuff you could probably do pretty easily.
And it was but it's like I don't listen to that, so it's like you don't know this, and I'm like, no, I've never listened to it before.
You're always gonna if you do covers and you're playing at bars, you're always gonna have people that will request some song and they're like, you never heard of this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, the name sounds vaguely familiar, but I've never, actively listened. I might have passively heard
listen to music like I know how it sounds. I don't know a lot of titles of songs. Right. Like I know how they sound, but if you're like, have you ever heard John Mellencamp?
Well, you have. We should get into that a little bit too.
I have, but so I'll finish the story though real quick.
Yeah.
So
keep going.
I kick her out, and she's fine. And as she's singing like the 3-4 songs she has, her boyfriend's like standing in the back, and he's like, "Come over here, like get away, let him do his job." And so she eventually goes up to him, and he's like, "All right." He like makes sure his buddy like has his girlfriend like keep an eye on her, and he comes up and he's like, "Can I play your guitar?" And I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, when we were talking about this before, my instinct was he was actually doing you a huge favor and being like,
that's what I thought.
Being a good guy and being like, hey, like he's I'm paying him to be here to play music. Like this isn't karaoke. Like here, why don't you come and just listen? And then to ruin it completely.
Yo, can I play your guitar?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. I was like, have you played before? He's like, I grew up playing, and he's older than I am. And I was like, all right, dude. Like, okay.
Have at it.
Have at it.
And that's more the situation where you're just like, you're taking the guitar, you're doing it's you, it's on you.
Yeah. And so he doesn't even stand up. He just sits down on his knee and like props it up on his knee, and he starts playing a really, really terrible version of Stairway to Heaven. And he's like, you don't know this? And I'm like, it's not one that I want to play.
Right.
You know, it's up like with Wagon Wheel. It's like it's overplayed, so I don't even want to touch it. And
well, we should get back to that, but go ahead.
Okay. He's like, all right. He like stops halfway through and gives me my guitar back, and then I keep going. So I play like 20 more minutes, and they're like, can you announce that there's a piñata? And I'm like, there's a piñata. And so for like 50 minutes to an hour, they just are smacking the hell out of this piñata. And I'm not doing it.
I was going to say, are you playing during
No, because they're behind me and
right.
I'm facing this way. So I'm not going to, everybody's behind me.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm not even going to, I could turn my PA around. I was like, but they are not interested at all.
Right.
And so they get done with the piñata and they go back and they're all sitting around now, like dinner's being served, and so they're all just around sitting, have a good time. I get to play like 30 more minutes, 40 more minutes, and then I see the dude who brought me down bring another musician down with all his gig bags, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah,
but at this point, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm ready for whatever this next one is.
This is definitely like where it takes a weirder turn somehow.
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And he's like, he's got a nice like show suit on, where he's in black slacks, but he's got like a patterned jacket, and he's got a big PA system. He's got 3 like instrument cases, and I'm like, does he have a band coming? Because I'm there from 6 to 9, so he pulls up and he starts setting up right next to me.
And what time is it?
This is probably like 7:30.
Right, so you're halfway through your set.
I am halfway through my set that I've played 20 minutes of at this point.
Which, if he's setting up to play at 9, I mean that doesn't. I mean that makes sense that. If he was in a full band, but that's not the case. So
I'm like, he gets like set up, and I finish my song, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And he was like, I'm a saxophone player, and I was like, all right. I was like, when? Like, when do you start? And he was like, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and I was like, we're overlapping for an hour. Like, he's like, no, I'll play with you. And I was like,
that's always a wild card.
Like, I've never played with you in my life. Your saxophones look like Timu saxophones. And I was like, you have a karaoke PA system. Like, we're going to be clashing. It's not... what type of saxophone do you play? And he was like, Kenny G. And I was like, this is definitely not going to go.
Did it even tell you, like, was it an alto sax? Was it
he had 2 of them. He had like the stick one.
I think the soprano.
And then he had...
so that's Kenny G. I think he plays like
the soprano. He had the stick one, and he had the... Not the Barry. I think it was
alto. And then a Barry. Okay, so... those would probably be the 2 I would have guessed, but especially if it says Kenny G.
Yeah, so he was playing that, and I played one of my songs, and I was like, I mean, yeah, come along for the ride if you want to. And he played a little bit, and it did sound good, but it was more of like one of my ballady songs, so I wasn't gonna crank out one of my like country tunes and see what he could do. And then so I like go up to the people and I'm like, what do you want me to do here? And they're like, work it out. And I'm like, great. So I went back and I was like, you want to play? And he was like, sure. So he like plugged in, and then they got tired of listening to the saxophone because he wasn't doing like his own songs. He was doing like, he'd play Whitney Houston out of the PA system and she'd be singing, and then he'd get to a part that he knew he could fill on and he'd do that.
Right.
And so it's like for 2 hours, and this homie's from St. Louis, and this is 2.5 hours for me. It's 5.5 hours for him. For what I was like, where'd they find you on? And he was like, musicians.com. And I was like, what?
Strange, but to each their own. If he can make a living doing that, that's great.
I was like, I've never heard of Craigslist for
that's
for musicians. But I was like, all right, dude. And so he did 30 minutes of that. They had me do some more playing for the people that can sing or try to sing.
Right. The karaoke
The
versions.
karaoke.
Live karaoke, I guess.
And
right.
then it just got to the point where like nobody was paying attention, and he was wanting to. He was like, "Can I play? Can I play? Can I play?" And I was like, "Go ahead and play."
Yeah.
I
think half of it when you're playing like a private party like that, it is you want them to have fun. So if that's how they're gonna have fun, I guess. I mean, if they are paying you appropriately, of course.
Yeah.
And it sounds like
he did. He paid me way more than he told me.
You don't have to say numbers
that we agreed on. He was like, "Here, man, you're gonna come back every weekend, and we're gonna be best friends." And let me tell you, he has not messaged me. He doesn't remember that he told me that. But the payment went through. It wasn't canceled, so I think he meant that.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean,
but it was I've had a weird show, like the first one I did with you, where the lady came in and kissed me. I miss her.
Listen to the last podcast with Aaron for that story.
I miss her. I search for her every time I'm in town. But yeah, it was definitely like one of the weirdest ones I've played so far.
The situations you get yourself into being a musician can be pretty weird, and sometimes you'll be asking yourself, "Why did I agree to do this?"
Yep.
And but you just want to have that go with the flow, like it is what it is. I mean, you're in that situation, so I don't know. I kind of look at it like I want my life to be interesting. I want my life to be an adventure. So it's like, that's just another story to tell, I mean, and some of those turn out to be real fun. I remember I did a private party that they asked me about it last minute. I had a show in Decatur till like 10. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to get there till like midnight. And they were like, yeah, we still have you.
Dang.
And I was like, you probably don't want me to set up my sound system because it's going to be too loud. So I just ended up I did my foot percussion and my guitar and everything. I didn't plug anything in. And I was in this like living room. And at that time, everybody was very drunk. There was probably 12 people left. And then, half of those were passed out. And then, so I'm playing in this room while people are kind of walking in the kitchen. And it's like 12:30, almost 1 a.m. And I'm playing for another hour. And it's like but it ends up, and it's just like me and 4 other people that really like music. And that we're just talking about music. I'm playing songs of band. And it ended up, it was like a really fun show. But it's like, would I have guessed that would have been what I was doing that night? No. I did not have any.
No.
And it's good to not have any sort of expectations. So, I mean, I find that's usually when I get disappointed is when I have. But if you're just going at something like, see what happens, you end up and are pleasantly surprised. Or, like, you can kind of laugh about it in your head while it's happening. I mean, I find myself doing that sometimes.
It's like a laughter of like, what is going on?
Yeah, like these people.
Like when Jim looks into the camera on The Office.
But there is no camera. But
there's no camera. I find one. I look into the lens of an invisible camera every now and then.
Yeah, they can get weird. That's for sure. But it's all part of it. And as long as you're getting paid doing the music, who cares that much? I mean, obviously, there is a goal. I mean, you want to be doing theaters or larger spaces with all original music. I feel like that's been my goal since I started. I'm not there yet for sure. I have had that happen at times, but I ideally that would be like most of the shows I play. But even in those situations, sometimes you're like really surprised at how maybe that place runs things or what the setup is. Or I mean, every show is so weird and different. I mean, if you play at the place all the time, you kind of know what to expect if you're like a regular. But a lot of these shows, it's like the first time and maybe the only time I play there. And then you show up and it's not at all what you were thinking, or the clientele's a little rowdier than you were, like getting kissed on the mouth by
on the cheek.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's maybe you can just.
She asked, and I said no, thank you. No, she didn't ask to do anything that night.
No consent was given; it just was taken. But anyway, but yeah. So I mean, it's an adventure. I try to keep that mindset as much as possible. It's like, everybody has days where they aren't maybe feeling the spirit or whatever. But it's just like, I always think if somebody was ever gonna write a book about my life, and I know nobody probably ever will.
I'll start it.
All right, I don't want to read it. I'm scared.
I don't know the first. How old are you?
35.
I don't know the first 34 and a half years of your life, so.
Well, this
is going to be a really short book.
This is the jumping off point, so this is where it gets interesting.
November 2023. TyJon said I did a good job at the open mic. This is where he messed up. No, he's never been able to get rid of me.
That's the big mistake, huh? But, I just think if somebody was going to write it, would that book be interesting to read? If they said, assuming that they wrote everything accurately over time. So I think that's how I try to some extent live my life with that mindset, kind of at the forefront. But I don't know. I mean, everybody has their own kind of way of doing everything. So, I mean, I don't think my way is any better or worse than any other person, but that's just my view.
Yeah.
And I think that allows you to open yourself up to some weirder, stranger experiences like the one you...
It is what it is. That's what I always say.
Yeah, yep. Ryan Wolf just had a song called that. I
really?
Think, it's a good one. So I was going to talk about just the studio today. So you did how many songs? You're just getting started. A little bit of a head cold, so no vocals, but...
No vocals.
Just trying to get some guitars tracked.
Corduroy Jacket. The Lot. SOS. And Rough Day.
Right.
So I did 4. We at least tracked some guitar for 4 of them and some scrappy vocals,
right.
Just to see where I was at. And I mean, 2 or 3 takes on each one. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
3 hours goes by quick. You don't realize that. I looked down at my phone and I was like, it's 1:30 already? I have to leave in 30 minutes.
Yeah. I
feel like I've been in here for 45 minutes.
You try to not get stuck in those long... Because Eric is a great person just to talk to. And I find myself sometimes I'll get going on some... I said it in the studio. I have a lot of theories on things. Mm-hmm. And he's good at knowing, where I'm... Don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but
yeah.
Calling me out or kind of following my thought process down, and we'll get into these rabbit holes where it's like, oh well, that was 20 minutes and can't get that time back.
Yep.
But and he's not doing it. It's me that's driving it, but it's like because I'm in the presence of somebody that actually has the
knowledge,
some real answers.
Yeah.
Whereas mine are all just theories, so it's good to get his perspective on a lot of things. But anyway, so was it 4 songs then? And are you gonna try to do like a full album? Like what is the long-term game plan?
I'd like to do a full album. A lot of the first couple songs that I've written are like time themed, so I'm planning on putting that into like its own project, whether that's a single every month for every 2 weeks, whatever that length of time looks like. They say
6 weeks, but I think 2 months is probably a little more realistic.
And then exclude 2 or 3 that I'll throw on the LP when I throw that out. That's been the goal since I started. Like really seriously doing this is like wanting to be able to like have an album that I could put out. So yeah, I guess we're in the starting stages of
which is
production,
exciting.
Pre-production.
It's exciting and overwhelming because it's like you still have a long way to go to get the songs to where they need, but at least you've started. You're a lot better off than not starting. So and you have 1 song in the can out for everyone to hear on YouTube.
It's on YouTube,
but it's gonna be on the.
It's gonna be on the streaming sites and everything. I'm waiting for the cover art.
Right.
Because a lot of that you have to be stupid specific with cover art and things like that.
You kind of get it like once you're kind of familiar with the guidelines, you start to have like your own like some templates that you can just dial right into and you know make work. But it is hard to pick, and I'm not a super visual person, so it's like sometimes I've hired people. Sometimes my brother has done it. Sometimes Lo has done it. I mean, she's done a bunch of stuff for me. She actually just filmed the video I'm going to release here. So, I mean, she helps me out all the time. But
it's a good video. I watched it already.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Brand new 4K camera.
Yeah.
TyJon Charlie in a way you've never seen him before.
a little too clearly, maybe. But
whoa, that's him. Whoa,
that's not what I thought.
That is an unemployed architect for sure.
But yeah. So I mean, kind of lost. Oh, the album art. Yeah. So it's just like, the first one's always the hardest. You kind of get a system. You either hire somebody that's good at doing it, and you can just, if you like what they're putting out, you can just always go back to them. And I just had for this new video, I had a logo animation put on it, and it looks really cool. And it's nothing I could have ever done myself. And it's kind of a rip-off of another artist I really like, but as far as just the look of the logos and stuff. But some of that you can't. It feels to some extent like you just can't do it all. Like I'm sure some people can, but the whole visual element of it is very tough for me. And taking pictures I've never been good at, and the video editing, like that's all stuff I've come to like really late. And it's made me better at the visual aspect of things, but some people just have that gift, I think, out of the womb,
Mm-hmm.
like Lo, she just has good eyes that she's been taking pictures forever.
Yeah.
And so, to hire somebody out to do that isn't necessarily the worst thing, especially in these first ones. But it's like recording, you get kind of a vision of what you want eventually,
Mm-hmm.
like right now you still probably aren't really sure what that should be. Over the years I've gotten I have a general idea of either something that this song makes me think of, or I try to incorporate a lot of specific things in every album art, so that way it's all tied together. It's like the Big Lebowski, it's the rug that ties the room together. So having some sort of continuity between all these songs I put out over the years and stuff. But you don't really know that right away. I mean, when I first started doing it was like when I went in the studio, I just would, my brother made our Design to Shine cover art, and I was just like, here, try that, something like that. And then he just kind of came up with his own thing, and it was great. And he's done a couple. He did my vinyl art as well for the one record that I got pressed, which he did really cool stuff with that. But over the years, you just get more of a vision of what.
Is that the Recplex?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the Recplex that's under the crossword?
Oh, wait. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
On your cover art for your vinyl record, you have that crossword, but under it is an image.
Crossword?
Like that, you have a crossword puzzle as your cover art for your vinyl album.
I think you're thinking of something else.
No,
I don't have one lying around. It's a big amp, and then there's a bunch of stuff on top of the amp. And then there's a QR code.
Oh, a QR code, not a crossword.
Oh, okay, that makes more
it
sense.
looks like a crossword puzzle.
I gotcha.
I've been into crosswords at work, dude, and I can't get them off my mind.
Apparently. I never would have even. I'll have to relook at it with that in mind. But yeah, it's actually a QR code. And if you look at the QR code,
idiot.
it is a map that I used to run, which is related to one of the songs. So everything on that album on the cover art is a reference to one of the songs.
Gotcha.
So the song is completely closed, and I wrote it on a very long run, or I at least got the inspiration for it, I would say, and got maybe some of the words. But on this specific route I used to do when I was in high school, and so I thought that would be a cool kind of tie-in. Plus, it's my hometown, Pontiac, kind of represent, right? And then, the QR code that it's encapsulated in. That's I did Digital Soul, so that's a reference to Digital Soul. I have the trilogy song, a little Batman symbol.
If you scan the QR code, it takes you to the live version of the performance, which is good.
Something I've been on a major kick of in the last few years is I don't want a song just to be a song. I want it to be this whole big multimedia, or that was an album or an EP, I guess. But it's I wanted it to be a whole project. It's cool to have the vinyl. I love the vinyl, but it's not everybody really listens to vinyl. So I didn't want it to be you could just hang it on the wall, and then if you did want to hear those songs on your smartphone, you scan that little QR and you can it's right to the live performances. So, and it was a live recording, so I mean it's of the recordings, I don't know. But I'm just trying to think of the right way to say it. I recorded it live. Put the videos of those specific live recordings, like of me actually recording the song, on a playlist that it scans to. I think that more what I'm trying to say.
I hope you understand.
Yeah, you guys will get it. But guys and gals. Anyway. All right. Is there anything else you want to cover?
William Nelson.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we went to a pretty crazy concert. So.
Right. It was like the day you told me, like the day before I got these tickets. You're like, you need to
actually go see some.
You need to go see some. When's the last concert you saw? And I was like, you, dude. And you're like, bigger and better, bro.
does not cut it for what I'm saying here.
So we went to like a fundraiser that I was playing at, and my mom ended up winning these Willie Nelson tickets.
Pretty wild.
Willie Nelson, Bob Dylan, John Mellencamp.
Yeah, that's a crazy lineup. So
I'm not a big John Mellencamp fan, but like I'm a huge Willie Nelson fan, and Bob Dylan's just Bob Dylan.
Yeah, it's Bob Dylan.
So it's like it doesn't matter what you think. So I went with Bree, who recorded that song with me, and it was Willie Nelson was probably the best concert I've ever been to. John Mellencamp opened up, and they're all old, mind you.
Yeah, I mean,
John Mellencamp is probably in his 70s, but like halfway through, she was like, "Is he wearing a jumpsuit, like a prison jumpsuit?" And he like kind of was. It was just like a black jumpsuit that he was wearing.
Well, I mean, Elvis wore jumpsuits. They're kind of right.
His were stylish.
Right.
This one was
more like
right out of the bag.
Right.
And he had the collar popped up, so he kind of looked like a janitor, mechanic.
Yeah.
But he was up there, and the band was up there, and he really wasn't moving all that much. I mean, he was standing on the amp every now and then and seeing the different sides of the audience and interacting with folks, but there's a hell of a lot more movement than the two of Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan combined.
Yeah.
Like, I give Willie the credit for even coming out and playing as long as he did. The dude's 91. But Bob Dylan, like, I don't know if he played one classic Bob Dylan song.
And that's what you hear.
Stood behind the piano the entire time. He had his, like, lyric book, the notes or whatever in front of him on the top of the piano. I don't think he interacted with the audience.
Didn't even acknowledge that there were...
Outside of, he had Willie's harmonica player come out and play harmonica with him for one song, and he said, "I'd like to thank Willie and the group for having us out here tonight."
Right.
I don't think he said hello. I don't know if he said thank you, that's it. But he played
undisturbed,
uninterrupted. Also, like, he's the only person I've seen that sounds the way that Cursive looks. Like, you can't understand a thing he's saying. You need subtitles on the screen. Like, I've been to some shows where they have subtitles on the screen, and it is beneficial, but it's also like kind of pointless. Like, for the deaf community that come to it, like, I don't understand why there's not subtitles, on the screen. But this dude needs it.
That almost seems like it would be better than having the person signing.
That's exactly what Bree said. She was like, why isn't there just general, like, but for Bob Dylan, dude, he sings in a knot, and it's just like everything just jumbles together. But he got done singing, he stepped to the left of his piano, and the lights went off, and he walked off stage. Like, he was in, he was out. He had to go to bed or go back to bed. I think that might have woke him up early to get there.
Well, I mean, that is kind of a true, like, Bob Dylan-y experience, though. Like, you don't expect to go to a Dylan concert and see what you would see at a Willie Nelson concert.
Yeah.
You expect to get the actual Dylan experience, which is, I think, exactly what you're saying. It's abstract. It's more artistic, maybe. It's weirder, stranger. But, I mean... I don't think that anybody, especially nowadays, that goes to one of those shows is really expecting to...
There were a lot of people, like, you could just tell by the outfits that they were wearing. And you're like, okay, Willie Nelson,
right?
Bob Dylan,
Yeah.
John Mellencamp,
yeah.
Bob Dylan was very, like, you could tell who was there for the abstract art. It was the people that looked like abstract art.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but there was also like the Willie Nelson crowds. Like, I think there was like a 9 or 10-year-old girl walking around and she had the Willie Nelson braids and
Nice.
that bandana and everything. There were probably like
And then
40 or 50 people that I saw within like the first minute of me being there that were dressed up like Willie.
right, and then the Mellencamp are probably more like working class kind of. I feel like that's what he's going for with the jumpsuit.
It was like biker gang for Mellencamp. There were
gotcha.
2 ladies in front of us that you could tell by the second Mellencamp song that they were here for him.
Yeah.
Because they were off their rockers, drunk, having the best time of their life. And they actually turned around and talked to us. And I was like, "Are you here for John Mellencamp?" And they were like, "We love him."
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
went crazy. And we're like, we could tell.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
they were great people to sit around. Then... like, there was no like announcer, so they just sort of came on stage,
Yeah.
which is like for people
Usually
of that magnitude,
You
you'd have
hear
like
the cheering though. You hear people start, and you're like, "Oh, are they coming?" Like it must be.
yeah. And I can't remember the group that opened the show
Right.
before John came out, but they were like a southern blues, like female rock praise gospel, like, but
Sounds cool.
that type of vibe.
And that's really
good.
what you should the spot you should be paying attention to, because that's if you were to get on anything like that
Yeah.
soon, that would be your spot. You'd be the opener first
Yeah.
before you're the headliner. So it's good for you to like kind of just see what that's even like. I do think that that's a very upper echelon and very both in age and level
Yeah.
of show to go to. It's good to go to like the Castle and see some, but to see like multiple tiers. We went to the State Fair, Lo and I, and we saw Jason Isbell.
Yeah.
It's in Springfield like a month ago, and he's definitely not to that Willie Nelson level by any means, but he's up there. I mean, he's definitely one of the, I think, as far as like kind of Americana, indie folk. And I mean, I like Jason Isbell. I think he's a great songwriter, and his songs that I love, but I don't know like his full catalog.
Yeah.
So it was very cool to kind of experience a concert in that way, where I was like really excited for the songs that I was excited for, but then also very impressed by a lot of other stuff that I'd never even heard of.
Yeah.
And just listening to the crowd sing along to some of the songs, like I kind of remember this one, but I didn't realize like it was like that big of a song. And then the other thing about that was I did not realize that he's a shredder. Like he can
Is he?
play guitar. I mean, it was crazy. It was like I kind of had some flashbacks of some interviews he's done where he's had a guitar in his hand, and I kind of remember like, oh yeah, I kind of remember he is like really good. But when I think of Jason Isbell, I think of a folky singer-songwriter. And the other thing that's interesting too is he was in Oppenheimer, like that.
He was?
Yeah, he was one of the main guys that. I think he married one of the Native Americans, and then she died, and then he married like her sister or something right after, and then she died. I think. Don't quote me on that.
Jason Isbell's out here killing people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that he killed them necessarily, but it was. I don't know how. Not Oppenheimer.
I was gonna say
Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm so sorry. I saw those two movies like at the same time, but
the same color palette.
Yeah, kind of
on the films.
Yeah, the Scorsese one, the Killer of the Flower Moon. But he was in that movie. He was one of the main characters. Makes more sense. With
he's
the
a guy who
American.
played Leonardo DiCaprio playing that one guy.
Yeah, exactly.
He looks good.
But so that was kind of an interesting thing. I kind of wondered if that would affect like the numbers, or if people were more or less interested since then. But it was just a cool show, and I don't get to a lot of concerts, but I got to see Shaky Graves at the Castle Theater, back in maybe early June, and that's like a whole different level. So it's nice to get like just the different tiers, and those are like your. First of all, they're very inspirational. Like you go there and you feel kind of rejuvenated when you see, and you're like, so sometimes you go to a show and you'll be like, that was not what I was hoping for. But that'll happen. And I try not to judge a band or a artist by just one show. But anyway, so more often than not, though, you are like, you come out of there and you're like ready to write a song. You're like, I need to get to work.
Yeah.
Because you see where you're kind of aiming for, and you can see like, sometimes you'll see somebody do it and you're like, I could definitely do that. Like sometimes you'll see people like Jason Isbell on guitar and you'll be like, I don't think I could do that.
Definitely can't do that.
Right. But then you'll see some sides of it. Maybe you'll see an opener, or maybe even the main artist, where you're like, I could definitely fit up there just as easy. And then you're like, you get your goals more defined. I think that's the theme of this whole podcast, with recording, with your album art, with your career. You kind of get more of a, when you go to live shows, of like what you're aiming for.
Yeah.
And I think it's super valuable, super inspirational. And I think that, I wish I could go to more concerts. I think that it is rejuvenating. But then you play every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So
yeah.
And then there's not much. The nice thing about the Castle, I will say, is, they do a lot of shows during the week of people just kind of passing from, like, St. Louis, Chicago, and their big weekend shows. So you can get kind of more in the middle of the week sometimes with some bigger artists. But it does get hard to make it to shows the more you start playing them. But it definitely is a game changer sometimes when you finally do get out there and see them.
Yeah.
But
no, it was really cool. I put something on my Snapchat. I was like, I'm going to be playing here one day.
There you go. Well, mark it, folks.
Willie Nelson will open for me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, I won't ask him to do that. He came out, he was wearing his little jacket. He had his pants tucked into his boots. And it was cold that night. And he's old. And so he was like really like singing his words quickly. And so it was basically like an hour and whatever it was of him just playing his guitar the entire time, which...
Yeah, he's a great guitar player.
I would have taken that without him. But like, he has so many great songs that like each song he sang was like, thank you for this gift, Willie.
Yeah.
Thank you for this gift. Like, he like Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. He played that. What's the one?
I'm not super familiar. I mean, I probably know more Dylan songs than I would know.
You wouldn't know these ones.
Right.
You couldn't understand
Not on
them.
this night, but I mean, I could name.
How do you like Bob Dylan, dude? Like, how do you not play guitar and a harmonica? How do you just stick to keys?
I mean, it might be an arthritis thing.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were like, the thing about Bob Dylan is like, and they have this musical about him now, too, and they mention it in the musical.
Isn't it Chalamet?
I don't remember.
I think there's it might be a movie coming out where Chalamet's playing him.
Timothy Chalamet, yeah. He's Bob Dylan.
Yeah. And something.
I think he's really good. I think it's called Bob Dylan. I think it's called Dylan is what it's called. But it's like, he just stood behind the piano, and in the musical, they like make fun of like, you want to go to a Dylan concert? Get ready.
It's not going to be what you expect.
It's not anything that you want.
Well, I think there is something just about, he's already done that how many times?
Well, that's the thing, too. It's like, he's got to be like, what do these people want from me?
Well, how can I make it more interesting for me? And maybe that's just play the piano and play, I've heard he does.
His piano was really good.
Right.
Like, his music sounds like he's eating glue, like his vocals do. Right. But his piano was like really, really good. He was hitting all the keys really nicely. Like, same with Willie Nelson. Like, his vocals, they sound like Willie Nelson. Like he's always going to sound that way. But he was definitely a lot shorter with his breath and a lot faster with his delivery. But his guitar skills were just still 100% spot on.
Kind of on that vein, Lucas Nelson, Willie's son.
He wasn't there.
I've seen him live at the Canopy Club in Champaign, kind of similar to the Castle size-wise, and there was not a ton of people there, and he rocked. I mean, he probably has one of my favorite professional electric guitar tones and that I've heard. He's a fantastic guitar player. I mean, he grew up playing lead guitar for Willie, so I mean, you have to be pretty good to be
he had one of his sons there, but I don't remember. I don't remember who he was, but he was good. They're there to he wants to have him on stage, but they're also there to. They have that rhythm guitar with them, and if he gets really ahead with his lyrics, they'll start to
Pull 'em
sing
back.
along, and he's like, "This is where we need to be." And there were times where Willie would just play and he would sing, and it would sound really cool. I mean, there's not a whole lot of like those family groups that go and do that anymore either,
right?
Which is cool to see.
True family band.
Yeah.
The thing about Lucas that's cool is like it sounds all his vocals are
almost just like his dad.
Pretty close to Willie's.
Same with his delivery.
But he plays like bluesy rock.
Yeah.
So it's like a different vibe. Like what if Willie Nelson played like blues rock, and that's what it would sound like. And it's a very cool kind of mix. Yeah. And he's a very good singer, very good guitar player. So it's awesome.
No, it was really fun. Like I would tell people, if you haven't seen Willie and you can go see him, go see him.
Right. Because you never know, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be around forever, but he's already kind of been.
I was thinking the other night, it's like you go into like a studio and you see the people that have worked there and you're like, oh, that's cool. But it's like Willie Nelson goes into a studio and sees the people that have like worked there, and he's like, I started this whole thing.
Right. Yeah. He was one of the OGs for sure, and he's still out there and that's what you hope. You hope that you can just keep doing it forever. I mean, he's done an awesome job at doing that, making it a way of life, and just,
it was awesome. And he sang one song that was like the last leaf on the tree, and it was basically like this ode to his buddies like Waylon and nice. Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard that have passed away, and he's basically up there like, I'm the last one, and that like outlaw country is like gone of that era.
Yeah,
I mean, because there's some new outlaw country that's happening right now, but like of that,
we're talking of old.
That first outlaw country was like
where all the new stuff comes from. I mean,
Bree was crying, I was crying. I was like, Willie, no, you're making me tear up here.
Well, that's what
you want. Really good.
You want
really good,
cathartic, transcendent experience. That's why I love music so much. Is like when I first got into music, it was because I went to concerts and I was like, I need to do this, like because I think that's sometimes the only way I can process or feel anything at all. Is when it was just not necessarily. We should talk
about that after the podcast.
But I mean, it's true though. It's true. I went to some concerts and they really elevated what I felt like was my consciousness. My overall feeling as a person, and made me feel things that I hadn't really before.
Dude, that's called shrooms.
Well, those are on a different day.
That's called LSD, man.
Well, right, but I didn't do any of that stuff, so that was my only connection.
You don't have to explain yourself to me. I don't have a gavel.
Well, I'm just saying, like, that might be why it was so important to me, is because I wasn't doing that stuff at that time. That was the way I would, get to that upper,
I went and saw Greta Van Fleet.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're probably like my last group that I saw before this last concert. And like same experience. I was like, these kids are 21.
Well, that is the crazy part.
I was like, these kids are 21 and that kid is screaming like a train horn.
He's got the craziest vocals. It is nuts.
I haven't listened to their new album that they released like this year, but like their Starcatcher album and the one before that, like those guys are crazy. And that's another family group. Like the two brothers and their
you see that
their best friends.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty sick too.
And sometimes I feel like you get this like really cohesive harmonies a lot of times when you have brothers, because it's like the way they talk is so similar already. So then, and their ranges are pretty close. Yeah. And then you just get this nice like harmony a lot of the time. One of my favorite bands, Kings of Leon, they're all brothers and a cousin, and they just have some really cool interesting things about them. But one of the things I would say is definitely that their harmonies are always just dead on. Yeah. And there's a documentary I watched a long time ago that said it showed them singing in church when they were young, a cappella, and beautiful harmonies too. It was very, very nice. And a lot of the people at the time said, they always thought Nathan, the drummer, would have been the lead vocalist, because he was always like the one who kind of shined through. But, come full circle. He's kind of more of the backing vocals, but because he's so good, he could have just as easily been a front man. So that confidence that comes with that, as well as singing, with that similar inflection and that similar timing, and I don't know. Yeah. It just, sometimes I feel like there's just a little extra magic in that.
A little more sauce.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or?
No.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, did you watch Deadpool and Wolverine?
I did.
What'd you think about it?
Lo and I went to see
no spoilers.
Theaters.
There's going to be spoilers.
I thought it was great. I mean, I was pretty entertained start to finish. I think that they did.
The little Easter eggs that they threw in were pretty nice, too.
They made it very cohesive story, but
when
also...
Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds started to sing Never Enough from The Greatest Showman.
Right.
That was funny. I don't know if you caught that part when they're fighting in the car.
Oh, I gotcha.
They weren't singing it, but when they were fighting in the car, he hits the radio.
Oh, and it comes
and
on.
It's it's from The Greatest Showman.
Right.
And there were a couple Easter eggs where they let their true colors of throwing jabs at each other actually in there.
Well, and that's the whole thing with Deadpool, is breaking that fourth wall and kind of addressing reality to some extent. So they can have a lot of fun with that, and they did. I think
it was funny.
And there's a lot of if you're a hardcore comic person who likes the actual comic books, a lot of Easter eggs there too. Mm-hmm. And it was just a funny, good, entertaining movie. I mean, I don't think it was my favorite movie ever, but it was definitely worth going to and worth seeing. I mean, I'll watch it again for sure.
Yeah, it was funny. It was good. Really wholesome story. Take your family to see it. Bring the kids.
Yeah,
Sunday school.
Sometimes, because Lo and I went to the theater, so I mean, there were kids in the theater, and you're just I don't know.
This had the record for most F-bombs dropped.
Yeah, and there's other stuff that is a little questionable, all the violence, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a bit bloody, lots of wild stuff happening, and things being said that you don't know if. But it'd be hard to tell if your kid's really into those types of movies. It'd be hard to be
take the kids to see the movie and let them find out for themselves.
The first one was kind of funny. Lo and I saw the regular version, and then we saw there was this other version of it, and it had Fred, the guy from the Wonder Years. Can't remember his last name.
Savage.
Fred Savage in it, and we were like, "What is this?"
Yeah, because he's laying on the bed. Deadpool's in his Bears jersey.
We thought it was a special or something different. Yeah. And it was the PG-13 version, where it was just a little bit different version, more for kids. That was probably the smart way to try to get the kid. But even every one we've seen in theaters of Deadpool, we're always there's some 6-year-olds here. They should not be here. But, who am I to judge? But nobody. I don't have kids, so I can't really say anything.
Well, take somebody else's kids and take them to see the movie.
I think that's against what I'm saying, ultimately. They shouldn't be there, probably, but...
I'm not the best influence, so
it doesn't matter. We know that already, so... But, anyway, so let's promote your song. Tell them how to listen to it.
Little Flyer is what it's called on... YouTube at Aaron Newsome
Music. And you should follow that page.
Aaron Newsome Music, AARON.
Subscribe,
NEWSOME. Like and subscribe. Comment. I read all the comments. I may not get back to all of them, but I read them. If you want to know what I've got going on, Facebook, Aaron Newsome Music. You can find me anywhere at Aaron Newsome Music. It's all the same across any platform. If you're in Bloomington,
go ahead.
Let me see. Let me pull my dates here.
But soon you're going to be able to find the Little Flyer song on the Spotify and anywhere you stream as well. But then as far as dates, if you want to come out and see him live.
When's this dropping?
I don't know. Whenever I get it edited. So it could be a while.
All right. Well, this Thursday, the 19th
of not going to be out
September.
Not going to be out Thursday. I promise that.
October 18th.
That seems a little safer. But
Noah Hutton and myself are planning a little singer-songwriter back and forth. We're trying to do it at the Shake It Up Cocktail Lounge in Bloomington. That may be decided by the time this drops. So that information will be on my Facebook page. That's what I've got. That's the one gig I've got coming up.
All right. Well, we'll get you on some other ones that I'm planning.
I'll be coming with Tyler some places, and I'm sure there's more stuff that I've got that's recently been figured out.
Right.
But
Not quite actualized quite yet.
Yeah,
In the process of booking. So just follow his Facebook, his Instagram. He posts about his shows all the time. Same for me. I definitely have a bunch of stuff, but I don't know when this is good. I have to do all the editing and all that stuff, so I really don't know when I'll be done with it. So
tomorrow, Tyler.
not gonna happen. I got another podcast tomorrow, which I'm excited about as well. So, I'll have 2 that I'll have to edit, and then I have a third one that I still haven't finished. So,
That's a lot of editing.
Well,
man.
it's just the multicam, and like I don't know. I get to this point where it's like sometimes I think I should just do it on a cell phone and not do all that. Like, does it really add that much value?
It does.
I mean,
especially with his new camera.
that's what we're hoping. But it's
you
like
can touch us.
you can smell. Wait, that might not be good. Anyway,
Go support live music.
yeah. Anyway,
Go Bears.
Doesn't matter if it's us. Just go out and see some live music. Put a few tips in the jar for us. And as always, I appreciate anybody who takes the time to listen and watch. And we will talk to you next time.
Bye, guys.
All right. We did it.